Hello, my name is Alyssa Borman, and this is my presentation for Cornerstone University on panic attacks. We will look at the background of panic attacks, what cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is, and how that applies to treatment of panic attacks. Panic attacks are defined as periodic, short bouts of panic that occur suddenly, reach a peak within 10 minutes, and then gradually pass. To be considered a panic attack, at least 4 of the following symptoms must be present: palpitations of the heart, sweating, tingling of hands or feet, shortness of breath, choking sensation, dizziness, hot and cold flashes, chest pains, nausea, faintness, fear of losing control, trembling, a feeling of unreality, and a fear of dying. Panic attacks are considered to be fairly common, as it is believed that 1 in 4 people experience at least one panic attack during their lifetime. Panic attacks often get confused with anxiety attacks. However, panic attacks and anxiety attacks have 2 different points of origin in the human brain, and they vary drastically. Anxiety is more of a condition of excessive and persistent worry over differing life events, whereas panic attacks are short bursts of intense fear marked by physically manifesting symptoms that may lead a person to believe that they are dying or even having a heart attack. Anxiety comes from worrying about a future event, while panic attacks are triggered with the events occurring in the here and now, and deal with a perceived immediate danger. Research shows that panic attacks are linked to the autonomic nervous system and the amygdala. According to researchers, the amygdala is responsible for the expression of fear and aggression, as well as a species-specific defensive behavior. The amygdala also plays a role in the formation and retrieval of emotional and fear-related memories, which would begin to explain why it is so heavily related to panic attacks. It is also important when considering panic attacks in the brain to remember that the amygdala, specifically the central nucleus of the amygdala, is heavily connected to the cortical regions of the brain, including the limbic system. The amygdala receives inputs from other parts of the brain, including the hippocampus, the thalamus, and the hypothalamus. The amygdala is also involved in initiating the fight or flight response when a person is confronted with a stimulus. One of the most common therapeutic approaches used to treat panic attacks is the cognitive behavioral therapy model. Cognitive behavioral therapy combines many successful treatments from cognitive and behavioral therapy treatments to better the outcome for the client. This therapy style utilizes cognitive therapy techniques that include cognitive restructuring and problem-solving techniques, as well as behavioral therapy techniques that include identifying and implementing coping skills, in vivo exposure therapy, and relaxation training. Cognitive techniques for treating panic attacks that may be included in cognitive behavioral therapy include problem-solving techniques and distraction techniques. For problem-solving techniques, that involves the client learning how to identify and change dysfunctional thinking and thought processes. This technique utilizes homework assignments. Most of the time will involve journaling, which includes the client self-reporting and tracking their behavior, their thoughts, their feelings, and events leading up to and following a panic attack itself. This kind of treatment helps the client and therapist identify trends, patterns, and triggers leading up to panic attacks. Distraction is another cognitive technique that can be utilized in cognitive behavioral therapy in the treatment of panic attacks. It provides a short-term relief of symptoms in the middle of a panic attack for the client. It also involves training the client to shift their focus to an emotionally neutral event when they begin to feel that panic start to set in, like that fight or flight response has been triggered. This can be as simple as teaching your client that when they feel that, they need to start doing a complex math problem, or count how many people in the market are wearing jeans, or simply take a look around and start counting how many female people there are around. Just something that shifts their focus from what they're feeling to something that is entirely emotionally neutral. The benefit to this is it opens a mental pathway for the client to utilize other coping skills to get them through the full process. These 2 cognitive techniques are very useful in CBT because these techniques can help the clients go back and identify and directly modify the dysfunctional or maladaptive cognitions that are associated with their panic attacks. Behavior techniques in the treatment of panic attacks utilized by CBT therapists definitely could involve in vivo exposure therapy, which exposes clients directly and indirectly to their fears through the use of flooding and systematic desensitization. Flooding is achieved in both real life, where the client is directly exposed to their fear-inducing stimulus, or in the client's imagination, where they are indirectly exposed to that fear-inducing stimulus. Through flooding experience, the client is exposed to the stimulus and forced to face their fears with no way out. They have to confront it. There's no backing down. You just walk up to the edge and eventually you jump. Systematic desensitization involves the client creating a list of their fears. This list of fears becomes a hierarchy, which the least fear-inducing stimulus is at the top and the greatest fear-inducing stimulus is at the bottom. Together with their therapist or counselor, the client works through this hierarchy until they can overcome their greatest fear-inducing stimulus, which is listed at the bottom of the list. This could be one of those things where they ricochet back and forth, like seeing a picture of a tarantula may not trigger them 1 week, and the next week it sets them off. It's a process, and it's a step-by-step thing that the therapist can walk through with them. These, I believe, are very helpful because they work with the client systematically, step-by-step, and expose them to their fear until that fight or flight response is essentially disassembled. It becomes neutral. I would like to briefly look at pharmaceutical treatments for panic attacks, starting with SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. These medications are classified as antidepressant medications and gradually improve mood. These medications only inhibit the reuptake of serotonin, which means it leaves more serotonin in the system for the system to absorb. Usually these kinds of medications are prescribed first in pharmaceutical treatments of panic attacks and include medications such as Prozac, Paxil, and Zoloft. The second pharmaceutical treatment is SNRIs, which are serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. They inhibit the reuptake of serotonin and norepinephrine. This includes the prescription drug of Effexor RX. These are only approved for more extreme forms of panic attacks, usually when panic disorder is diagnosed. The last medication that I'd like to touch on in pharmaceutical treatments of panic attacks is benzodiazepines. These medications behave like sedatives that act as depressants on the central nervous system. These medications are actually classified as anti-anxiety medications rather than antidepressant medications and are for short-term use only, as long-term use leads to addiction and mental and physical dependency, thus leading mental health professionals to be very cautious when using these in pharmaceutical treatments and therapy. This list of benzodiazepines includes very popular or well-known medications like Ativan, Xanax, and Transian. It is important to state that pharmaceutical medications and treatment often require that the client be active in traditional psychotherapy, also known as talk therapy. Pharmaceutical treatments work to help the client get to a place where they can address the underlying psychological issues that they might be struggling with in traditional psychotherapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, help them learn coping techniques and such to help them work their way through it, as the pharmaceutical treatment helps them manage their symptoms. Pharmaceutical treatments are also utilized to help address and regulate any physiological imbalances that may be present in the client's brain that hinder the progress of traditional therapy as well. It is important to mention that research has shown that clients whose treatment includes the use of pharmaceutical medications together with cognitive behavioral therapy do show better results than just traditional cognitive therapy on their own. These improved results do decrease a bit when the amount of pharmaceutical medication is reduced and the client returns to just cognitive behavioral therapy. It is important to state that cognitive behavioral therapy is still found to be one of the most successful treatments of panic attacks with or without the presence of pharmaceutical medications, even though the progress is achieved quicker when it is paired with pharmaceutical treatments. Interestingly enough, researchers are also beginning to publish research findings showing promising results for improving treatment of panic attacks and panic disorder by pairing cognitive behavioral therapy with regular aerobic exercise. A study by German researchers found that there was a significant group difference at a 7-month follow-up in improvement in the study participants that were in the group assigned to the regular aerobic exercise compared to the control group and the group assigned to low impact exercises only. This study lends itself to a mounting pile of evidence that is finding that regular aerobic exercise improves the client's progress while they are engaged in CBT. To recap panic attacks in closing, they involve fear, the fight or flight response, and involve the amygdala and all its connections in the brain. Panic attacks are different from anxiety attacks. They occur in the here and now, and they have specific symptoms that manifest physically. To recap the treatment of panic attacks using CBT, it is important to remember that CBT is one of the most effective therapy treatments for panic attacks. It uses problem-solving techniques to identify and change dysfunctional thought processes and patterns, while also implementing and using in vivo exposure therapy that utilizes flooding and systematic desensitization to help the client face their fears and eventually overcome them. Cognitive behavioral therapy treatments are successful on their own. However, they do show better results when paired with pharmaceutical treatments and regular aerobic exercise. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your time and attention. Have a good night. Bye-bye.